In the heart of Omirima, Obi confesses his mistakes before the elders, declaring his love for Ada and their unborn child. The village holds its breath as the chief's silence stretches, judgment hanging in the air. Just as all hope seems lost, an unexpected voice breaks through, changing everything in a way no one saw coming. The sun hung low over the quiet village of Omirima, where tall palm trees swayed gently, casting their shadows on the red earth. Children with bright eyes and loud laughter scampered along narrow paths, carrying worn slates and chalk. The village school sat in the heart of Omirima, its mud walls and thatched roof sheltering the hopes and dreams of many. In that school, there was a teacher everyone loved. Her name was Ada. She was young, beautiful, and smart, with a voice so soothing it could calm the most restless child. Ada always wore colorful dresses with patterns that told stories of her homeland. She had come to Omirima a year ago, bringing with her big ideas and a warm smile. Ada loved her students like they were her own children. But among them, one boy always stood out, Obi. He was tall for his age, with curious eyes and a mind as sharp as a hunter's spear. Obi was 17, a year away from leaving the school, and he dreamed of becoming a great man who would one day help his family rise out of poverty. Obi had a way with words that made everyone laugh or think deeply. He would always stay after class, asking Ada questions about life, about dreams, and sometimes even about the stars. Ada saw something special in him, something bright and promising. But she didn't know that their closeness was stirring whispers among the villagers. One day, as the rainy season swept across Omirima, Ada gave her students a challenge. "Bring me a story," she said, her smile lighting up the dim classroom. "A story about your life, something true, something important." When the day came to share the stories, Obi stood out. It was a story about loss, about how his father had died in the war, leaving his mother to raise him and his siblings. He spoke with such raw emotion that Ada felt tears sting her eyes. After class, she called Obi to her desk. "You have a gift, Obi," she said softly. "Your words can move mountains. Don't ever stop dreaming." Obi smiled, but there was something in his eyes, something more than gratitude. In the following days, the rainy season turned the village into a place of whispers. Ada noticed that Obi stayed longer and longer after class. He helped her carry books, sweep the floor, and even walked her home when the roads were muddy. Ada thought it was innocent, but the villagers thought otherwise. "She spends too much time with that boy," said Mama Ikin, the village seamstress, as she sat under the big mango tree with other women. "It's not proper." "But Ada is a good woman," replied another. "She wouldn't do such a thing." Still, the whispers grew louder. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Obi knocked on Ada's door. His shirt was soaked from the rain, and his face was troubled. "What's wrong, Obi?" Ada asked, letting him in. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low. "I don't know who else to trust." He spoke of a problem at home, about how his younger siblings were hungry, and his mother was falling sick. Ada, feeling a pang of compassion, offered him food and some money to buy medicine. But as the evening wore on, the atmosphere shifted. Obi's gratitude turned into something deeper, something dangerous. "I don't just admire you as a teacher, Ada," he said, his voice trembling. "You mean so much more to me." Ada froze, her heart pounding. "Obi, you're my student," she said firmly. "This can't happen." But the lines were already blurred, the boundaries already crossed in ways neither of them fully understood. As days turned into weeks, Ada tried to keep her distance, but it was too late. The villagers had seen Obi leaving her house that evening. They whispered louder now, their voices like the hum of bees. Then one fateful morning, Ada woke up feeling strange, tired, weak, and nauseous. Days later, she realized the truth that shattered her world. She was with child. Panic gripped her as she sat alone in her small room, her hands trembling. She thought of the shame, the judgment, and the future she had worked so hard to build. She thought of Obi, of his young face and the dreams he carried. "What have I done?" she whispered to herself. The villagers began to notice Ada's growing belly. "Who is the father?" they asked, their voices sharp with curiosity and scorn. Ada said nothing, but Obi knew. He saw the pain in her eyes, the fear she carried. One evening, he confronted her. "You don't have to face this alone," he said. "I'll tell them it's me. I'll take responsibility." But Ada shook her head. "No, Obi. Your life is just beginning. This is my burden to bear." The village of Omirima had a way of holding secrets tightly, but only for so long. As Ada's belly grew, so did the intensity of the villagers' questions. Whispers turned into pointed stares, and even the children at school began to notice her changed appearance. One day, during class, a brave boy named Chike blurted out, "Teacher Ada, why is your stomach big?" The room went silent. Ada froze, her heart pounding like a drum. She forced a smile and quickly redirected the class to their lessons, but the damage was done. The children's innocent questions spread through the village like wildfire. That evening, Ada sat by her window, staring into the dark, her mind racing. She thought of leaving Omirima, starting fresh somewhere no one knew her. But where would she go? And how would she live? A knock at her door broke her thoughts. It was Obi. "Ada, the rumors are getting worse," he said, his voice filled with worry. "Some people think it's me." Ada's chest tightened. She had tried so hard to shield him, to keep his name out of it. But the villagers were perceptive, and Obi's frequent visits hadn't gone unnoticed. "I'll talk to them," Obi said, his voice steady. "I'll tell them the truth." "No." Ada's voice was sharp. She grabbed his arm, her eyes pleading. "You don't understand, Obi. If they find out, it will ruin you. Your future, your family, they'll blame you for everything." "But I can't let you carry this alone," Obi insisted. "You've done so much for me. This is my responsibility too." The next morning, Ada woke to find Mama Ikin and two other women standing outside her house. Their faces were grim, their arms crossed. "We need to talk," Mama Ikin said. Ada stepped outside, her heart pounding. The women wasted no time. "Who is the father of your child?" Mama Ikin demanded. Ada swallowed hard, her mind racing for an answer. "That's my private matter," she said finally, her voice trembling. "Private?" Mama Ikin's voice rose. "You're a teacher, a role model for our children. And you expect us to ignore this scandal?" The other women murmured in agreement, their eyes boring into Ada. "I'm not answering any more questions," Ada said firmly, retreating into her house and bolting the door. But as she leaned against the wooden frame, tears streamed down her face. The tension in the village reached its peak when the elders of Omirima called a meeting. The entire community gathered under the big baobab tree, their voices buzzing with anticipation. Ada sat at the edge of the crowd, her head bowed. Obi was there too, standing with his mother, who looked both worried and confused. The chief, an old man with a voice like thunder, raised his hand for silence. "We are here to discuss a matter that concerns us all," he began. Teacher Ada stepped forward. Ada's legs felt like lead as she walked to the center of the circle. The chief's piercing eyes studied her. "Who is the father of your child?" Ada opened her mouth, but no words came out. She felt the weight of 100 eyes on her, the judgment, the scorn. "I am," a voice said suddenly. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Obi stepped forward. His mother grabbed his arm, her face pale. "Obi, no," she whispered. But Obi stood firm. "It's me," he repeated. "I'm the father." Chaos erupted. Voices shouted over each other, some accusing, others defending. The chief banged his staff on the ground, demanding silence. "You are a boy," one elder exclaimed, pointing at Obi. "How could you do this?" Obi's mother was in tears, pleading with the villagers. "Please, he's just a child. This can't be true." Ada watched helplessly, her heart breaking. She wanted to speak, to tell them it wasn't all Obi's fault, but her voice was drowned out by the uproar. That night, as the village simmered with anger and confusion, Ada packed her belongings. She couldn't stay in Omirima any longer. The shame, the judgment, it was too much. She wrote a letter to Obi, explaining everything. "You have a bright future ahead of you," she wrote. "Don't let this hold you back. I'm leaving, not because I don't care, but because I must protect you." The next morning, Ada was gone. Obi woke to find the letter under his door. He read it with trembling hands, his heart sinking. He ran to her house, but it was empty. The village buzzed with news of Ada's disappearance. Some were relieved, thinking the scandal was over. Others, like Obi, felt a deep sense of loss. But Ada's departure was not the end of the story. Months later, rumors began to spread of a woman in a distant village, teaching children under the shade of a great tree. Obi, now determined to find her, began to plan his journey. He couldn't let her face this alone. He knew their story wasn't finished. Obi sat by the riverbank, his thoughts a whirlwind. The letter Ada left had planted a seed of determination in his heart. He could not let her face the consequences alone, nor could he ignore the bond they shared. By now, the whispers in Omirima had faded, but Obi's resolve had only grown stronger. His mother, however, watched him with worried eyes. She had noticed him withdrawing, spending hours lost in thought. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Obi approached his mother. "Mama," he said, his voice steady but soft, "I need to leave Omirima." His mother's hands froze over the basket of yams she was peeling. "Leave? Where would you go, my son?" "To find Ada," Obi said simply. His mother's face darkened. "Obi, that woman brought shame to this family. She left without a word. What more do you owe her?" Obi's jaw tightened. "She didn't bring shame. She protected me. And now, I must protect her." His mother sighed deeply, her heart torn between fear for her son and the undeniable truth in his words. "If you must go," she said at last, "go with my blessing. But remember, the path you're choosing will not be easy." Obi set out the next morning, carrying a small bag with a few clothes, some dried food, and the last of the coins Ada had once given him. The journey to find her would not be straightforward. All he had was a vague rumor about a teacher in a distant village. He traveled by foot, his sandals kicking up red dust as he moved from village to village. At each stop, he asked questions, describing Ada's appearance to anyone who would listen. Most shook their heads, but a few nodded knowingly. "I've heard of a teacher like that," one elderly man said in a small village called Kota. "She teaches children under the big Iroko tree in Umuko. But it's a day's journey from here." Obi's heart raced as he approached Umuko the next day. It was a bustling village, larger than Omirima, with wide streets and rows of thatch roof huts. In the center of the village stood the Iroko tree, its branches stretching high into the sky. Beneath its shade, children sat in neat rows, their laughter ringing out as a familiar figure moved among them. Ada. Obi's breath caught in his throat. She looked thinner, her face tired but still radiant. She wore a simple wrapper, and her belly, now unmistakably round, told of how much time had passed. Ada's heart skipped a beat when she saw Obi standing at the edge of the clearing. Her chalk fell from her hand, and the children turned to see what had distracted their teacher. "Class is over," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "Go home now." The children scattered, leaving Ada and Obi alone under the tree. "What are you doing here?" Ada asked, her voice a mix of shock and anger. "I came for you," Obi said. "I couldn't stay in Omirima knowing you were out here alone. I left to protect you, Obi," Ada replied, her eyes filling with tears. "You had a future. Why would you throw it away for me?" "Because you are my future," Obi said, stepping closer. "You and our child." Their reunion was bittersweet. Ada felt both relief and fear. Obi's presence brought back memories she had tried to bury, but it also reminded her of the bond they shared, a bond that could not be easily broken. But Umuko was not Omirima. The villagers here were curious but not cruel. They welcomed Ada and tolerated her quiet, mysterious past. Now, with Obi by her side, the questions began anew. Who is the father of her child, the women whispered as they fetched water from the stream. Is it that young man who just arrived? Ada and Obi worked hard to keep to themselves, but the weight of their secret was too heavy to hide forever. One evening, as they sat outside Ada's small hut, Obi said, "We can't keep running, Ada. We need to face the truth." "And then what?" Ada asked, her voice breaking. "Do you think the world will understand us? That they'll forgive us?" "They don't have to," Obi said firmly. "As long as we stand together, nothing else matters." Ada looked at him, her heart torn between hope and fear. For so long, she had carried the burden of their choices alone. But now, with Obi beside her, she felt a flicker of courage. The story of Ada and Obi spread beyond Umuko, drawing the attention of a traveling elder named Namdi, known for settling disputes and offering wisdom. When he arrived in the village, he requested a meeting with Ada and Obi. "I have heard your story," Namdi said, his voice deep and calm. "But every story has two sides. Tell me yours." Ada hesitated, but Obi took her hand and spoke. Together, they recounted everything, their connection, their mistakes, and the child they now awaited. Namdi listened quietly, his face unreadable. When they finished, he said, "The path you have chosen is not easy, but it is your own. The world may judge you, but the strength to endure must come from within." He turned to the gathered villagers and spoke louder. "Who among you has lived a life without fault? Let those without sin cast the first stone." The villagers murmured among themselves, unsure how to respond. Some nodded in agreement, while others remained skeptical. But Namdi's words planted a seed, a chance for Ada and Obi to live without fear of judgment. As the days passed, the village's whispers began to fade, replaced by cautious acceptance. Obi found work in the fields, and Ada continued to teach under the Iroko tree, her belly growing heavier with each passing week. But peace is never permanent, and the shadows of their past still lingered. News of their story had reached Omirima, and not everyone was willing to let it go. Omirima was a village that thrived on stories, and Ada and Obi's tale had grown into a wildfire of rumors and judgment. While some villagers chose to move on, others carried the bitterness like a flame, refusing to let the scandal die. One such person was Mama Ikin, who saw Ada's actions as a stain on the village's reputation. "She has no shame," Mama Ikin said one evening, sitting with the elders under the mango tree. "She corrupted that boy and fled. We must act before her shame becomes ours." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. While most of them had grown tired of the matter, Mama Ikin's persistence stirred something among them. "We must bring her back," one elder said reluctantly. "She must face the consequences of her actions." Meanwhile, in Umuko, life had begun to stabilize for Ada and Obi. The villagers, guided by Namdi's wisdom, had largely accepted them. Obi worked tirelessly in the fields, earning enough to support Ada and their unborn child. Ada continued teaching, finding joy in shaping young minds despite the challenges she faced. One afternoon, as Obi returned from the fields, he found Ada sitting outside their small hut, her hands resting on her round belly. She looked up and smiled, but there was a shadow of worry in her eyes. "What's wrong?" Obi asked, kneeling beside her. "I had a dream," Ada said softly. "I saw the people of Omirima coming for us." Obi frowned. "They can't touch us here. We've done nothing wrong." But Ada shook her head. "Dreams have a way of warning us, Obi. We need to be prepared." The warning came true a week later. A group of men from Omirima arrived in Umuko, led by Mama Ikin. They approached the village chief, demanding that Ada and Obi return with them. "They shamed our village," Mama Ikin declared. "They must answer for what they've done." The Umuko chief, a calm but stern man named Obayoma, listened carefully. "Ada and Obi are under my protection," he said. "They have done no harm here. Why should we hand them over?" "They disrespected our traditions," Mama Ikin insisted. "If you harbor them, you disrespect us too." Obayoma glanced at Ada and Obi, who stood silently to the side, their faces pale. "Is this true?" he asked them. Obi stepped forward. We made mistakes, he admitted, his voice steady. But we are trying to build a life here, to raise our child in peace. All we ask is for a chance to live without judgment. Omirima nodded, his expression thoughtful. Omirima may carry its wounds, but here in Umiko, we heal. Ada and Obi will stay. Mama Ikin was furious, but she knew better than to challenge Omirima. She returned to Omirima with the men, bitter but defeated. However, her actions left Ada and Obi shaken. They knew they couldn't live in peace as long as their story was a source of tension. That evening, Ada and Obi sat under the Iroko tree, their hands intertwined. "We can't keep running," Ada said softly. "I go back to Omirima," Obi said suddenly. "I face them, clear your name, and take whatever punishment they give." Ada's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to do this, Obi. We can stay here, raise our child, and leave the past behind." "No," Obi said firmly. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about our child. I want them to grow up without fear, without shame. I'll make things right." The next morning, Obi set out for Omirima, leaving Ada in tears. When he arrived, the villagers gathered around him, their expressions a mix of curiosity and anger. "I have come to take responsibility," Obi announced. "Ada did nothing wrong. I pursued her. I crossed the line. If you want to punish someone, punish me." The elders were stunned into silence. Mama Ikin, however, seized the moment. "He admits it," she cried. "This boy has brought shame to us all." But before the elders could decide, Obi's mother stepped forward. "Enough," she said, her voice breaking. "This boy is my son, and I will not let you destroy him for a mistake. If you want to punish someone, punish me as well. I raised him. I taught him." Her words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. One by one, the villagers began to lower their heads, their anger replaced by unease. The chief finally spoke. "We have all made mistakes in life. Obi is young. He has taken responsibility for his actions. It is not our place to destroy his future." The tension in Omirima began to ease after that day. Obi returned to Umiko with a newfound sense of freedom. The villagers there welcomed him back, and Ada, overwhelmed with relief, embraced him tightly. Months later, Ada gave birth to a healthy baby boy under the shade of the Iroko tree. They named him Chimeka, meaning God has done well. As they held their son, Ada and Obi knew their journey wasn't over. But they also knew they had faced the worst of the storm and come out stronger. Their story became a lesson for those around them, a reminder that even in the face of judgment and mistakes, redemption and love could prevail. And as they looked at their son, they promised to build a future filled with hope, one where he could grow up without the shadows of their past. Thanks for watching African Tales by Francis. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends. Check out this next video for more thrilling tales and timeless lessons. And hey, don't leave without subscribing to join our growing community of African story lovers. Let's keep the stories alive together.